What up, Perps? Kid Copious back in effect. Purple State Party, you know what we're doing here. Repping America, the center, and common sense. This week's letter is unity, the United States. We need to get back to that. That's a very important thing. One of the ways that we get back to being united as a country and as a people is through discussion. And that's what I try to bring here. I might not always be right. I might not have all the answers. I try to provide solutions, and deep in my heart, I wish I could do more. I don't have the time. I don't have the resources. I'm just trying to inspire people to think differently, to consider both sides of an argument before jumping into this hyperbole that we have going on in this country. Everything in this country is just being extremified. Word of the week, extremified. Let's get this thing rolling. One of the reasons why we are such a de-unified country right now is because social media, the news agencies, anybody who makes their money off of clicks is really taking extremist viewpoints. You're either supporting the far left or the far right, and there's no room in the middle. That's what I'm trying to carve out. I'm trying to carve out a little room in the middle. And one of the ways that I think I can help expand the middle is, by bringing forward these stories that are being told by the media, influencers, people like that, to keep us at these extreme points. One of the ones that came up recently is that the CBS is canceling The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. And, I'm reading stuff where people are saying, well, that's because, he takes on Trump, and Trump sued Paramount, the company that runs CBS. They had to settle with Trump for $16 million for editing the Kamala Harris interview. And that's the reason, it was Trump. The left wants to say, oh, it was Trump, and the right wants to cheer it as some sort of triumph. But in reality, the show is losing $40 million a season. It costs $100 million a year, and they're recouping $60 million. They were thinking of canceling it something like 10 months ago, but they gave him more time to see what was going to happen. And, Paramount's going into a merger with some other company, something Sky. It's immaterial. And, the show's just not profitable. The show, it's not a matter of what he does or doesn't say. What it really comes down to is that younger generations and even people of my generation have other things at night to entertain us. We could be up playing games, hanging out live online with our friends, Or in my case, I'm not awake at that time slot. I'm usually asleep by 10 o'clock. But those are the real reasons. Last week we talked about the Epstein files, right? And that's the big controversy right now, that the far left and the far right are bickering over, and everybody's talking about it, and they feel betrayed or blah, 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 blah. And it is kind of funny that at one point the Democrats were downplaying it. Now the Democrats are playing it up, and in reverse. The Republicans were playing it up, now they're playing it down. And the truth of the matter is, if there was any smoking gun, it was probably going to affect both sides equally, mutually assured destruction. So the files got burned, because that's what politicians do. Politicians back in the 1700s were about building a nation, about keeping a nation strong. And we had that for over a century, where politicians were, for the most part, trying to do good by the country, whatever that meant that they had to do. But now they're just saying whatever they have to say to get cash, to get reelected, or to get elected in the first place. You look at that guy like Mamdani in New York, some of the stuff that he's spouting. He's trying to appeal to a certain subsection, hoping that people who might not be that far left will still vote for him because he has a D next to his name. I saw an article that really put that into sharp focus. In France, a politician made a bold claim that any Gazan is welcome in France. Neighboring Muslim countries will not take these people in, because from birth, Gazans have been raised with these extremist viewpoints where the West and Israel must be destroyed for paradise on earth. And places like Egypt and Jordan, and, Syria, some of those other places, they don't really want that kind of mindset coming into their country. But France will take all 2 million of them. Yeah. And why? Because the young and dumb who subscribe to these far left philosophies will cheer them. And the politicians know that they've got enough money to steer clear of the consequences. And that's one of the things that these rich politicians do. They don't care about the consequences because they've got the money to get above it. Here in California, do you think rich people care if gasoline hits $8 a gallon? No. Who will that affect? The poor, the middle class. Really? And that's why California is such a focus for the right. Because this is where you can see what these Democrat policies, these far left policies, are all about. You know, a lot of people, when they talk about the right, they talk about their beliefs in the Bible, their phony God, their phony book, and all of that. Well, what does the left have? They have the same thing. They have their phony gods and their phony books. You know, California, the Democrats here in California are sacrificing the entire middle class to achieve their goal. You know, they're winning right now because they want to make California exclusive for the rich and the people who clean their toilets. And the worst part is they get in the middle class to go along with this because the middle class is under threat of guilt, of feeling bad, of not doing enough for the environment, of not doing enough for illegal aliens, of not doing enough for drug addicts and the mentally ill, the homeless, the people on the streets, the criminals. Oh, they all had bad lives. Oh, daddy was mean to me. So we're going to let you just steal whatever you want from a Target. Yeah, that's what's going on. And we have to see it. The only way we're ever going to get unified is if enough people from these extreme positions meet in the middle and start saying, yeah, you're right, my side has a problem. They do. I voted for Trump. I'll admit his problems. He has issues with his attitude. He has issues with making bold statements. The Republicans do have a tendency to want to ban abortion and outlaw marijuana. Those are stupid policies. But what are the Democrats giving us? Are the Democrats who are going to allow us to have abortions and weed, are they giving us good ideas in return? No, they're giving us bad ideas. And one of the worst ideas is the bullet train. So if you haven't come across it, the Trump administration is pulling $4 billion in funding for the bullet train. And Gavin Newsom is, of course, saying it's illegal. Well, what's illegal is what he's done with the money. You see, through this high-speed rail project, he has created false jobs that end up paying union dues and giving the union more money. He's giving contractors money. He's giving consultants money. Lots of people are getting rich off the high-speed train, and yet there's no train to be seen. It's ridiculous. These unions and these contractors and consultants, they then use some of that money that they've gotten to give back to Gavin Newsom through campaign donations. You know, Gavin and his cronies can give jobs to friends and families. And you have to ask yourself, and this goes out to California Democratic voters, did you elect Gavin so he could get rich? And you have to ask yourself, what have they done for us? What has the Democratic Party done for us? We can feel good about some of our policies, but what have they done? They fixed roads. Okay. What else? Nothing. They've driven up the cost of energy. You know, in the summer months that's coming up, I'm expecting a $500 electrical bill. How is that helping me? You know, I think it's time, now that we have these refineries shutting down and all of this, I think maybe we should stop using this California gas. Maybe it's time to just remove that and say, well, look, even with the California gas, we're not making any dent in this so-called climate change that we're fighting. My personal belief is man can do very little to fight climate change. I think a lot of what we're seeing in our climate right now has to do with the planet, and there's not much we can do about it. But, you know, speaking of those refineries shutting down, we're entering into an era here in California where we may be buying our refined oil from India. And where does India get their oil? From Russia. And in about a month and a half, Russian oil is going to be sanctioned heavily, even if it goes through a third party. Did we elect Gavin and the Democrats so that we'd be forced to take the bus? You know? And what about the taxes on gas? The tax hike is a result of this Road Repair and Accountability Act, right? And it was designed to ensure long-term funding for road repairs and highway maintenance. Okay, I can get that. Bridge safety upgrades. Yeah, I can get that. Public transit investments. Why? Why if I'm buying gasoline for my car to drive on roads and bridges, should I be funding buses and high-speed rail projects, bicycle and pedestrian projects? Again, I'm driving my car. Why should I be paying for people who walk or bike? I don't know. But that's the kind of thinking that we need to start having, because we're going broke. And of course, this law, this tax hike law, includes an annual inflation indexing to make sure revenues don't lose value over time. These funds are constitutionally protected and cannot be diverted to non-transportation uses. Well, they can, because you budget less, tax higher, and then you use your budget increase wherever you want to use it. But again, are the rest of us being protected against inflation? No. And we're doing these things knowing full well what kind of burden it's going to put on people. You know, we use this we use this thing called cap and trade here, okay? Where, well, hold on, let me explain this right. Let me get on the right page here. Okay? So if company A pollutes, they can buy at auction credits from clean company B to offset their pollution. The rich get richer and the pollution continues. All of these credits are just mythical. And we do it, and it's supposed to make us feel good, but at the end of the day, the pollution still continues. And for a while, California was getting rich off of this. They were making lots of money. They were making billions off of this cap and trade program. But in this coming year, California is set to lose $3 billion. What? We don't need a government like Gavin or the Democrats to lose us more money. What is going on here? We know that a lot of the money that is being spent in the name of green energy and climate change is just lining the pockets of corporations and politicians. Is that what you elected Gavin and the Dems to do? Enrich companies while still polluting? Does that make any sense? How much of this burden do we need to bear? I myself don't have guilt over it. So I look at it through the lens of, hey, there's not much we can do. So why in the frick am I spending so much money on it? You know, another one. Did you elect the Democrats and Gavin Newsom to raise prices on eggs and pork with rules that benefit animals that are being raised as crops for slaughter? I mean, because that's what we've done. We passed a law that increased the size of cages for pigs and chickens. Yippee. Okay. And at the end of the day, those pigs and those chickens are going to be killed and put on the market as meat. Why do we need to increase the cost? So we can feel better? Is that what we elected these people for? Is that why you marked your ballot for Gavin Newsom? So that he could give pigs more room to live but less money in your wallet? What's the point? Does feeling good really cost that much? I don't think it does. So another thing, you know, did you elect Gavin Newsom and all of these Democrats to shield illegal immigrants? Many of them who are here with nefarious purposes, they've already proven that. You know, we've already arrested plenty of gang members, drug dealers, and criminals who have fled their homeland for here, and they come to California because California is a sanctuary state. So as long as, you know, they don't get caught doing something serious, you know, they're not going to get reported. Look, I'm not happy with the way ICE has been conducting these raids, okay? I'm really not. I don't like the fact that the illegal immigration that I see as a problem comes from other countries other than Mexico and Central America. And right now, our citizens of Mexican heritage have to live in fear because ICE is just out there snatching people up. You know, I'm not happy about that. But, you know, again, all of this would go away if they simply stop being a sanctuary state. Because remember, here in California, the DAs and the government as a whole tries to lessen charges. And they secure deals by lowering these charges. So, for example, an attempted rape can be pled down to a sexual misconduct. So that illegal alien can now walk back into society here in California and not face deportation. And the media plays along with it too. I mean, recently, because a federal judge said that ICE cannot conduct raids the way they've been doing it in 7 of our counties, ICE went up north to Sacktown, up to Sacramento, to the capital. And one of the persons that they snatched up had been busted for dealing fentanyl. But since that's not serious, he was released back into society. Is that what we want? Do we want our government protecting illegal immigrants who sell fentanyl? Because that's what it is. Meanwhile, the newspapers and the other media out there try to spin a story about how a citizen was arrested during this raid. Well, this citizen was slashing tires on the ICE vehicles. So yeah, they arrested him. Not for immigration violations, but for slashing the tires of a police vehicle. Makes sense to me. But again, keep in mind, a lot of this would go away if we undid this stupid sanctuary state. I've said it before, I believe that people who are in this country illegally should be protected from deportation if they have these accidental law enforcement encounters, such as, tickets in their vehicle. I don't care about that. Or if they're a witness or a victim to a crime. I don't think, we should be notifying ICE that somebody who got robbed is an illegal alien so that ICE comes over and picks it up. Look, if you can keep your head down and then eventually apply for some pathway to citizenship, I'm fine with that. But you have to be on your best behavior. And by best behavior, I mean at least what we expect out of our citizens. But I would argue that you should be even better than our citizens because you're looking for entrance into our country. What about these fires? What about what happened with the fires? Complete mismanagement of our forest, saying, oh, well, we don't want to touch the forest because the environmentalists say it's bad. Yeah, right. Well, you see what's bad is when our entire cities burn down, and now there's talk of putting low-income housing in the Pacific Palisades. So these low-income families are going to have to buy gas and groceries at inflated prices because keep in mind, I'm sure commercial rent in Pacific Palisades is quite expensive. So stores have to charge more. Is this another one of the bad ideas that made you vote for Gavin Newsom and the Democrats here in California? I'm not saying the Republicans have the answers, but I think at least here in California we could say we know the Democrats don't. What have they done here? In the decades of one-party rule, high energy prices, random unsafe streets, urban blight, out-of-control homelessness and crime, is that what you want? Is that what you voted for? Or are you fed up and you realize that being nice to criminals just gets more criminals? That giving benefits to illegal immigrants just gets you more illegal immigrants? That giving handouts to the homeless just gets you more homeless? It's time to put on our big boy pants and start doing what needs to be done. We need to clean the streets up. They like to say that homelessness is a social issue, not a police issue. Well, we've tried that. We've tried the bullet train. We've tried the special gasoline. We've tried the enormous taxes that they put on every gallon of gasoline. And it's not working. Why is it that I, who was born here, like many others, why do I feel like come my retirement, I'm going to have to leave my state? Is that what we're voting for? That everybody else's rights are more important than somebody who was born here in California? That you're going to price me out of my home? Is that what we voted for? So that we could give money to people who just want to do drugs on the streets? Does that make any sense? Does it make any sense to continue with a bullet train that when it is, if it is ever finished, is going to take just as long as driving and cost more than what it would cost to fly? These are not good plans. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to take on Gavin Newsom and the Democrats because I don't like them. I don't like them because their ideas are bad. They're just bad. And we have to realize that. And the things on the right that we think are bad, we have to say this is bad. We don't want, this outlawing of abortion. We don't want weed to be illegal anymore. Where the fuck is the movement on that? Why hasn't Donald Trump and his people just removed weed from the schedule? I don't get it. But again, they have a handful of bad ideas. The Democrats, pockets full. Pockets full. One of the reasons why corporations, the media, the politicians are conspiring to keep us divided is because if we unite, we're going to see what's really going on. Lots of people out there are getting rich by taking our money, and we're allowing it because we're so invested in our team. I'm Team Purple, so I don't really think that what the Republicans do that's bad or the Democrats do that's bad is acceptable. I'm not cheering for one particular team. Like I said earlier, I'm not happy with the way ICE is conducting themselves, but at the same time, I know that this is blowback on California's sanctuary policies, and I know that 10 to 14 million illegal aliens streamed across the border under Biden, and it's starting to wreak havoc on, the cost of housing, the cost of goods, wages, things like that. I'm paused on what I think about Trump's tariffs. I don't know how that's going to shake out. I really don't. I'm waiting to see. I'm not going to overreact one way or the other to that. And that's what we need to do to start getting unified. We need to stop overreacting. We need to do some research, have some discussions, and figure it out. One of the things I do when I read an article that seems to really hit the left or promote the right or whatever, I look at the comment sections to kind of see what people are saying might be the pitfalls or the good things about this. We have to do our research. The more research we do, the more understanding we have, and we can reach a point of unification again. And once we're united, if we just start voting for good people, not good politicians, maybe we could affect some change. I think for Californians, it starts right here in California. It's time for some tough decisions to be made. I want to move on to the United States. I was watching Band of Brothers again. I've seen it many times. It's on Netflix right now. It's a really good show. And it's a good reminder of what America stood for during World War II. When the 101 parachuted into occupied Eindhoven, right? They gave this boy some chocolate, and it was his first taste of chocolate because he had been born under the occupation. That's my America. That's what I see in myself. We strive for our ideals. We're unwavering in our quest for peace, justice, and equality. We fall short, yeah. Nobody's perfect. But in a lot of ways, we are the closest. We are the closest to perfect. And just because we do things that some people don't agree with, that doesn't mean we're bad. Just because we have government cover-ups and things like that, yeah, every country goes through that. But we try. But one of the things that really helped us before was a good, strong, somewhat impartial media. Not a media that just wants to divide us. And our undoing will be at the hands of these liberals whose grand ideas lead to high costs with no return. It's insanity packaged as progress. And we see it city upon city upon city where these progressive policies are just dragging us down. That's not America. America is not giving crackheads clean crack pipes. It's arresting them, putting them in the system, giving them an opportunity to change their way of life. And there's evidence that shows what works and why, and what doesn't work and why. But as long as we're not united, the politicians can just ignore all of that evidence. They could just continue with what they think is, the important part, which is themselves, their friends, their families, their reelection. And there's evidence now that our current political structure is designed to create kings, while also saying that we oppose kings. You notice that? I mean, you have Bernie Sanders talking about killing the oligarchy, and yet he's part of the oligarchy. It's mind-bending. And if we don't stop that, it is going to destroy this country. Because, frankly, this is how civil wars start. For some of you, this will be a repeat message. You already know this. For some of you, maybe you don't know this. But I'm a person who, for most of my life, I have struggled with depression, anxiety. I've been diagnosed with it, if that helps. I was diagnosed with ADD. I have it super bad. I have to live a somewhat routine life. I have the same thing for breakfast every single morning. I fight against this. And to me, mental health, you are what's important. And I heard something this week on Armstrong and Getty 790, or, you can get the podcast too for Armstrong and Getty. I highly recommend them. They're fair. They're balanced. Yes, they're libertarians. Yes, they are a bit on the conservative side. But you know what? If Trump F's up, they call him out on it. But they brought something up. You watch a movie about, let's say, an underdog sports team, right? And the movie ends with their triumphant win. But, on Armstrong and Getty, they brought up this golfer, Scotty Scheffler, who was talking about his recent win. And he said, yeah, the win is a high. But 30 minutes later, you're wondering what's for dinner. This is what Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and the media as a whole doesn't really want to tell you. Life is the reward. That's it. Life is the reward. The movie might end with this triumphant victory, but our life doesn't. Our life goes on. What's really important, and this I got from that golfer, Scotty, it's family. It's being able to provide for our family. And that's something that we're seeing a lack of here in California, where it's becoming harder and harder to just eke out a little bit of happiness because every dime that the government can squeeze out of us is being squeezed out of us. I'm blessed. I work in a job with a great team. We do hard but important work. And every so often we have to dig real deep to complete our mission. Just like those soldiers with the 101. We have to endure. We have to plow through. We have to take our triumphs wherever we can find them. And that is my message. You have to find your happiness wherever it is. Stop living by other people's ideals and other people's whatevers. I don't know how to say it, but you have to ignore social media. You have to worry about yourself and do good by yourself. For me, it's just watching a good murder mystery at the end of the night with my wife. Hanging out. I mean, the other night me and the family, we watched Thunderbolts. It's a great movie, by the way. And, just spending that time together. That's what's important. If you're chasing an unattainable dream, you will always be unhappy. And if you have problems, I'm telling you, I'm nothing special. I overcame drug addiction, alcoholism, depression, suicidal thoughts, you name it. It's gone through this noggin of mine. And you are what's the most important thing. You, the people here, the future generations. This is who I care about. And I know deep down inside that right now, America is not being run like America. Okay? We are the United States. We are not the divided states. And this is causing great anxiety amongst the people. These companies are getting rich off of clickbait, and the clickbait is what is destroying us, literally destroying our mental health and breaking us down, both physically, mentally, and financially. And it needs to stop, and the only way it's going to stop is if we unify. Pull to the middle, Look for what works, reject what doesn't work. And let's move forward with good people at the helm, not rich scumbags like Gavin Newsom, okay? I don't want to see that shit anymore. I don't want to see a repeat of Harris versus Trump or Trump versus Clinton. I want to see good people stepping up, and I want to see good people being rewarded. I think you're all good people. You know? I don't know what else to say other than I'm Kid Copious. I'm Purple State Party, and so are you. Love one another. Keep on grinding, you know? And when the ball drops, dance it out.